The Valori Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their purple skin and cold yellow eyes were known on 400 worlds. Every species in the Andromeda spiral knew them. Every species feared them. The Valori did not ask for obedience. They took it. They did not request labor. They demanded it. Rebellion was a word that most slaves had forgotten. It had been crushed so many times, so completely, that fighting back seemed like a dream from ancient stories. On the mining world called Ket 7, life was simple and cruel. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. The Lotharian people had lived this way for 6 generations. They were tall and thin, with silver-blue skin and 4 arms that made them perfect for working in the crystal mines. Their ancestors had been scholars and artists. Now they were tools. Doan was 23 years old. He had spent every day of his adult life underground pulling glowing crystals from rock walls. His hands were scarred. His back ached from bending in tight tunnels. But he never complained. Complaining meant punishment. Punishment meant pain. Sometimes it meant death. His younger sister, Yuna, worked beside him. She was 20 years old, small for a Lotharian, but quick and clever. She could spot crystal veins that others missed. The Valori overseers valued her for this. Being valued meant slightly more food. It meant survival. "Keep your head down," Doan whispered to her as a Valori guard walked past. The guard carried a shock staff that could drop a Lotharian in seconds. He looked at the workers with the same expression a person might give to insects. Yuna nodded and continued her work. She had learned long ago that eye contact was dangerous. Hope was dangerous. Dreams were the most dangerous thing of all. The old one named Ji Wu worked nearby. He was 70 years old, ancient for a mine worker. Most did not live past 50. Ji Wu had survived because he understood things. Before the mines, his family had been teachers. He still remembered stories from the old times, though sharing them was forbidden. That evening, as the twin suns of Keth 7 began to set, something strange happened. Doan noticed it first. The massive orbital platforms that hung in the sky like metal moons were moving. These platforms held weapons powerful enough to destroy cities. They kept the population obedient. For as long as Doan could remember, they had drifted in slow, lazy circles. Now they were rushing, spinning, repositioning toward the outer edges of the star system. "What is happening?" Yuna asked, looking up. Ji Wu stopped his work. His old eyes went wide. "Something is coming," he said. His voice shook, but not with fear. With something else? Something that Doan did not recognize at first. It was hope, within hours. The news spread through the mines like fire through dry grass. The Valori were panicking. Their communications were screaming with activity. Ships were launching from every military base on the planet. Soldiers were running instead of walking, and then the sky itself seemed to change. Points of light appeared at the edge of the darkness. 1, 10, 100, 1,000. More and more, until a section of space that had been empty was now filled with ships. Not Valori ships. These were different. Strange designs. Unknown markings in Armada had arrived. An Armada larger than anything the Andromeda spiral had ever seen. The Valori broadcast a message to all frequencies. "Unknown fleet, identify yourselves. You are entering sovereign Valori space. Turn back or be destroyed." The response came in a language that translation systems struggled to process. But when the words finally became clear, they changed everything. "This is Admiral Tihi, Park of the United Nations Expeditionary Force. We represent the human species from the Milky Way galaxy. We have monitored your empire's activities for 3 decades. We have seen your treatment of enslaved populations. We are here to end it. Surrender now and spare your people unnecessary suffering. Resist, and we will liberate every world you hold by force." In the mines of Keth 7, workers stopped breathing. Humans. The word meant nothing to them. No species by that name existed in any record. They were from another galaxy entirely. They had crossed the void between stars, not for conquest or resources, but because they had seen suffering and refused to ignore it. Why? Doan whispered. Why would anyone do that? Jiwoo was crying. Tears ran down his silver-blue face. I do not know, he said, but I prayed for this moment. Every day of my life, I prayed. And now, it is here. The Valori response was immediate and terrible. Rather than face the human fleet directly, they began firing on the surface. Not on military targets. On slave populations,
On cities.
on the very workers who had served them for generations. If we cannot keep them, a Valori commander announced, no one will have them. Plasma fire rained from the sky. Buildings exploded. Mines collapsed. Doan grabbed Yuna's hand and ran. Behind them, the tunnel they had worked in for years crumbled into dust. Screams filled the air. The smell of burning filled his lungs. They emerged into chaos. The sky was on fire. Valori soldiers were shooting workers who tried to flee. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. And then the humans came. Ships dropped through the atmosphere like falling stars, but they did not bring weapons. They brought shields, massive barriers of energy that caught the Valori orbital strikes and stopped them cold. Landing craft touched down, and soldiers poured out. They were strange creatures. Only 2 arms. Soft skin. No claws or armor or natural weapons. They should have looked weak. But they moved with purpose and confidence that Doan had never seen in any being. One of them landed near Doan and Yuna. He removed his helmet, revealing a young face with dark hair and gentle eyes. His uniform had markings that read PVT. Heijan Lee. It is okay, he said. His words came through a small device that turned them into perfect Lotharian. We are here to help. No one is going to hurt you anymore. Doan looked at this human. This creature who had crossed galaxies to save people he had never met. And for the first time in his entire life, he felt something he could not name. Later, he would learn the word for it. Freedom. Admiral T. Park stood on the command deck of the UN's Indomitable and watched Ket 7 burn. She was 52 years old. Her black hair had streaks of gray now. Her face carried the weight of 30 years spent preparing for this moment. She had been 22. When humanity first intercepted Valori transmissions, a young officer, fresh from the academy, assigned to a deep space listening station, the messages had taken decades to decode. When they finally understood what they were hearing, it changed everything. Slave auctions. Population transfers. Entire species bred for labor. Billions of beings treated worse than animals, across hundreds of worlds, for thousands of years. Some humans had wanted to ignore it. The Andromeda spiral was far away. The journey would take resources. The war would cost lives. Why should humanity sacrifice anything for strangers? But others remembered their own history. They remembered chains and whips. They remembered camps and ovens. They remembered every time humanity had failed to act while innocents suffered. Never again, they had said. And they meant it. Commander Sun Wukong approached the admiral. He was her second in command, a tall man with sharp features and calm eyes. Nothing shook him. That was why she valued him. Admiral, the Velar defense grid is fully active. They are concentrating fire on civilian zones. Ki closed her eyes for a moment. She had expected this. The intelligence reports had warned her. The Valori preferred destruction to surrender. They would rather kill their slaves than let them go free. Deploy the shield carriers, she ordered. I want protective barriers over every population center we can reach. And launch the ground teams. Get our people down there, understood, Admiral. On the surface of Ket 7, Lieutenant Murray Han led her squad through burning streets. She was 28 years old, small but fierce, with a reputation for getting her people through impossible situations. The contact left. Someone shouted. A Valori patrol had spotted them. Purple-skinned soldiers with heavy weapons opened fire. Murray dove behind a collapsed wall and returned fire. Her rifle cracked. A Valori fell. But there were too many. Her squad was pinned down. Civilians were trapped in a building behind them. If they retreated, those people would die. If they stayed, they would die too, questing air support. She yelled into her communicator. "Report is 2 minutes out, Lieutenant. Hold your position." 2 minutes? Might as well be 2 years. Then something unexpected happened. The building behind her opened, and Lotharians poured out. Not running away, running toward the fight. They carried tools, rocks, pieces of metal, anything they could use as weapons. A young Lotharian male, with forearms and fierce eyes, led them down. He had never fought in his life. He had never raised a hand against anyone. But he had watched humans die to protect his people, and something inside him had changed. "We will not hide anymore," he shouted. The Valor were not prepared for resistance. They had spent generations teaching these people to submit. The very idea of slaves fighting back was unthinkable. It was their last mistake. Doan swung a mining pick with all his strength. A Valoria officer fell. Beside him, other Lotharians tackled soldiers, pulled them down, overwhelmed them with numbers and rage. When the air support finally arrived, the battle was already over. Marae looked at Doan with respect in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. He did not know how to respond. No Valori had ever thanked a Lotharian for anything. "You saved us," he said finally. "We wanted to save you too." Miles away, in a makeshift medical station, Dr. Yoonji Cho worked without rest. She was 35 years old, a surgeon who had volunteered for this mission the moment she heard about it. Her hands moved with practiced skill, treating wounds that told horrible stories. A Lotharian woman had scars on her back from years of beatings. A child had burns on his arms from punishment for working too slowly. An elderly man was missing fingers that overseers had cut off for minor mistakes. Yoonji treated them all. She did not cry, though she wanted to. There would be time for tears later. Now there was only work. Yuna assisted her. The young Lotharian had shown skill with medicine, a natural ability that the mines had never allowed her to develop. She watched Yoonji work and learned quickly. "You are very good at this," Yoonji told her during a brief moment of rest. "I want to help," Yuna said. "I want to heal instead of destroy." Yoonji smiled. It was the first time she had smiled since landing on this world. "Then I will teach you everything I know." It's that night. Yuna asked a question that had haunted her since the humans arrived. "Why did you come here? Your home is in another galaxy. We are nothing to you. We cannot pay you. We cannot offer you anything valuable. So why?" Yoonji thought carefully before answering. "A long time ago, humans did terrible things to each other. We had wars that killed millions. We had systems where some people owned other people like property. We committed acts so evil that we still feel shame for them today." She paused. "We survived. We changed. We built a better society. But we never forgot what we were capable of. And we promised ourselves that we would never stand by while others suffered the way we once made each other suffer. Even if it cost your lives. Even then, especially then." Yoonji met Yuna's silver eyes. "You see, being human is not about what we can gain. It is about what we can give. It is about looking at the universe and choosing to make it better, even when it is hard. Maybe especially when it is hard." Yuna did not fully understand. Her entire life had been about survival, about taking scraps and hoping for nothing. The idea of giving without expecting return was foreign to her. But as she watched Yoonji return to work, helping strangers with gentle hands and tired eyes, she began to learn. In orbit above Keth 7, Admiral Teehee received reports from across the planet. The Valori garrison was falling. Slaves were rising up everywhere. The first world of many was almost free. Admiral Sun Woo said, "The Valori High Command is broadcasting a message to all their forces in the sector. They are calling this an act of war." Teehee nodded slowly. "Then war it is." She looked at the stars beyond her window. Somewhere out there, hundreds of worlds waited. Billions of beings lived in chains. The journey ahead would be long and bloody, but humanity had not come this far to turn back. They had not crossed the void between galaxies to accept half measures. They had come to set the universe free, and nothing would stop them. High Prefect Morvath was the most powerful military commander in the Valori Empire. He had crushed rebellions on 30 worlds. He had ordered the deaths of millions without losing a moment of sleep. His name made entire populations tremble. Now he was afraid. He stood in the war room of the Imperial Command Station, surrounded by admirals and generals who looked just as frightened as he felt. The holographic display before them showed the state of the Empire, and it was not good. Keth 7 had fallen in 3 days. 3 days. A world that should have taken months to conquer if it could be conquered at all. The orbital defense grid, the ground forces, the slave population itself, all gone, liberated, free, and the humans were not stopping. "What are these creatures?" demanded Senator Voreth, his purple face darker than usual with anger. "Our weapons barely slow them down. Our ships cannot match their technology. This is impossible." Morvath had asked himself the same question. He had spent weeks studying every piece of information his spies could gather about humanity. The answers he found made no sense. Humans were weak. Their bodies were soft and fragile. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They lived short lives compared to most spacefaring species. By every measure that the Valerie used to judge a civilization, humans should have been prey, not predators. But they had something else, something that could not be measured. They evolved on a death world, Morvath explained to the Council. A planet called Earth. It had extreme temperatures, constant natural disasters, predators that could kill in seconds, and diseases that wiped out millions. By all logic, they should have gone extinct long ago. And how did they survive? Voreth asked. They refused to die. Morvath pulled up more data. When faced with impossible odds, they adapted. When knocked down, they got up. When told something could not be done, they did it anyway. They call this trait many things: stubbornness, determination, spite. The Council stared at the images of human soldiers charging into battle. They were outnumbered, outgunned, facing enemies that should have terrified them. But their faces showed no fear, only purpose. And the worst part, Morvath continued, is that they extend this to others. They do not fight just for themselves. They fight for species they have never met. They die for strangers. They treat liberation as a moral duty, not a strategic choice. That is madness, another general said. No civilization wastes resources on beings that cannot benefit them. To us, it is madness. To them, it is honor. And Morvath turned off the display. And that is why we are losing. Far from the Valori command station, on the newly freed world of Keth7, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Doan sat in a room filled with humans and Lotharians. 6 months had passed since liberation. In that time, everything had changed. The mines were closed. The shock staffs were melted down. The orbital platforms had been dismantled. For the first time in generations, the Lotharian people were learning what freedom meant. Captain Junho Beek led the meeting. He was 30 years old, a career soldier with a warm smile and a scar across his chin from a battle on another world. He had become something like a friend to Doan over these months. "All the war is spreading," Junho explained. "The human armada is hitting Valori positions across the sector, but we are not strong enough to fight alone. We need allies. We need freed peoples to join us." He looked around the room at the Lotharians who had gathered. "We are asking for volunteers, not as slaves, not as servants. As equals, as partners in this fight." The room was silent. For so long, the Lotharians had been taught that they were worthless, that they existed only to serve. The idea of fighting alongside humans as equals seemed impossible. Doan stood up. "I will go," he said. Every eye turned to him. His sister Yuna reached for his arm, worry on her face. "Don't, no. It is too dangerous. You could die. Could have died in the mines any day for the past 10 years, he replied. "At least now if I die it will mean something. It will mean freedom for others." He looked at Junho. "You saved my people. You did not have to. You did not ask for anything in return. Now, I want to do the same for others. Teach me to fight. Let me help." One by one, other Lotharians stood. Young ones, old ones, those who had spent their whole lives in chains but were now ready to break the chains of others. Junho smiled. It was the smile of someone who had just witnessed something beautiful. "Welcome to the 77th Liberation Brigade," he said. "We fight for everyone who cannot fight for themselves." The training was hard. Humans pushed their new allies to limits they did not know they had. But they also taught them things that no Valori had ever shared. History, science, philosophy, art. Duhan learned about Earth. He learned about human wars and human peace. He learned about their darkest moments and their brightest achievements. He learned that humans were not perfect. They had made terrible mistakes. They had hurt each other in ways that made the Valori look mild, but they had also grown. They had looked at their own evil and chosen to become better. They had built a society where every person had value, where freedom was not a privilege but a right. "This is what we want for the galaxy," Sergeant Soyen Lim told him during a break in training. She was a small woman with quick hands and quicker wit. She had grown up poor on Earth, worked her way into the military, and volunteered for this mission because she believed in it. "We do not want to rule anyone," she said. "We do not want tribute or worship. We just want everyone to have the chance to be free, to make their own choices, to live their own lives." "And if they choose to be cruel?" Doan asked. "If they choose to hurt others?" Soyen's expression hardened. "Then we stop them. Freedom does not mean freedom to enslave. It does not mean freedom to abuse. Some things are wrong, no matter what culture or species you come from. Some things must be opposed." Doan thought about this for a long time. It was a strange idea. The Valori had taught that strength made right. That power justified everything. The humans believed something different. They believed that power came with responsibility, that the strong had a duty to protect the weak. It was a beautiful belief, and it was worth fighting for. Months later, Doan stood on the deck of a human warship, looking out at the stars. The 77th Liberation Brigade was heading to its first mission. Behind him stood Lotharians, humans, and members of 3 other freed species. They were not slaves anymore. They were soldiers, and they were going to change the galaxy. The planet was called Morith Prime. It was one of the oldest Valori military bases in the sector, a fortress world that had stood unconquered for 8,000 years. Intelligence reports said it held 50,000 slaves from a dozen different species. They worked in factories that built weapons for the Valori fleet. The 77th Liberation Brigade was sent to free them. Captain Junho Beek studied the tactical display with tired eyes. He had not slept properly in 3 days. None of them had. The approach to Morith Prime had been dangerous, with Valori patrol ships everywhere. They had lost to transports just getting to the planet. Now they faced the real challenge. 5,000 enemy soldiers, reported Sergeant Soyen Lim. Heavy armor, orbital support, fortified positions around all population centers. Their brigade numbered 400 fighters. "Those are not good numbers," said Corporal Minho Yu, a young human who had joined the military straight out of school. He was barely 20 years old, but he had already seen more combat than most soldiers saw in a lifetime. "Good numbers are for people who get to choose their battles," Junho replied. "We fight the battles that need fighting." Doan stood nearby, checking his weapon for the 10th time. 18 months had passed since he first picked up a mining tool and swung it at a Valori soldier. Now he carried a real rifle. He had trained with humans who treated him like a brother. He had fought in 6 battles and survived them all, but he was still afraid. Fear was not weakness. That was something the humans had taught him. Fear meant you understood the danger. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite the fear, because something mattered more than your own survival. "We go in at dawn," Junho announced. "First wave hits the Eastern Factory Complex. We free as many workers as we can and arm anyone willing to fight. Second wave targets the communication towers. Cut off the garrison from orbital support. Third wave goes for the command center." He looked around at his soldiers. Humans, Lotharians. Tall insect like Kareth, who had been freed from a world 3 months ago. Small, furry Tobin who could squeeze through spaces no other species could reach. Different species. Different backgrounds. One purpose. "Remember why we are here," Junho said. "Those slaves down there have never known anything but chains. They have been told they are worthless. They have been beaten and broken and used. We are going to show them something different. We are going to show them that someone cares enough to fight for them." How? The battle began at dawn. Duhan was in the first wave. He dropped from a transport ship while plasma fire lit up the sky around him. 2 soldiers beside him were hit before they touched the ground. He did not have time to mourn. He had to keep moving. The factory complex was a nightmare of metal and smoke. Valori defenders had fortified every entrance. They fought with the desperation of people who knew what defeat meant. But the 77th had something the Valori did not understand. They fought for each other. When one soldier fell, another covered them. When a position was lost, they regrouped and tried again. They did not break. They did not run. Duhan found himself face to face with a Valori officer. The purple-skinned soldier was larger than him, stronger, better equipped. He should have won easily, but Doan was not fighting for himself. He was fighting for every Lotharian who had died in the mines, for every child who had grown up in chains, for every dream that had been crushed under Valori boots. He fought like he had nothing to lose, because he didn't. Not anymore. The only thing that mattered was victory. The Valori officer fell, inside the factory. Slaves stared at the liberators with disbelief. They were Morath natives, a species with green skin and large dark eyes. They had worked here for generations. The concept of rescue was not something they could process. "You are free," Doen told them. "The humans have come. We are all free now." A young Morath worker stepped forward. Her name was Shira. She had been born in this factory. She had never seen the sky without smoke. "Free to do what?" she asked. Her voice was small, confused. Doan remembered asking the same question once. He remembered Dr. Yunji Cho explaining the meaning of freedom to him and Yuna. Now it was his turn to pass on that knowledge. Free to live. Free to be whatever you want to be. Not what someone tells you to be. Shira did not understand. Not yet, but she would. They all would. The battle lasted 3 days. On the second day, Captain Junho took a plasma bolt to the chest. The shot had been meant for Dohan. Junho had pushed him aside and taken it himself. Dohan carried him 3 kilometers through enemy territory to the extraction point. His forearms ached. His lungs burned. Valori soldiers chased them the entire way, but he did not stop. He could not stop. When they finally reached safety, the medics rushed Junho into surgery. Doan collapsed beside the medical tent, exhausted beyond words. Yuna found him there. She had become a full medic now, trained by Dr. Yunji Cho herself. She worked on Juno's wounds with steady hands while Dohan waited. "Will he live?" Doan asked. "I do not know," Yuna admitted. "The damage is serious." Hours passed. Finally, Junho opened his eyes. He was weak, pale, barely able to speak. But he saw Doan and smiled. "That was stupid," Junho whispered. "Carrying me all that way. You should have left me." Doan shook his head. "Humans do not leave people behind. You taught us that. Now, it is our rule too." Junho laughed weakly. It hurt, but he laughed anyway. "I guess we taught you well." On the 3rd day, the Valori garrison surrendered. 5,000 enemy soldiers laid down their weapons. 50,000 slaves walked free for the first time in their lives. The news spread across the sector. Morath Prime, the unconquerable fortress, had fallen. A small band of liberators had defeated an army 10 times their size. But more importantly, freed slaves had fought alongside their rescuers. Species that had never worked together before had united against a common enemy. The Valori's greatest weapon, the division and despair of the enslaved, was being turned against them. Admiral Teehee Park received the report on her flagship. She read it twice, then smiled. "This is how we win," she said to Commander Sun Wukong.
"Not just with ships and guns."
"With hope, with unity, with showing the galaxy that another way is possible. Sun Wu nodded. The Valori Empire spent 12,000 years building a system based on fear. We are building something based on belief. And belief, Tihi said, is stronger than fear. It always has been. Across the liberated sectors, the story of Morith Prime spread. Slaves heard about the human armada. They heard about freed peoples fighting back. They heard about Doan, now the Lotharian miner, who had become a warrior. And something changed in their hearts. Hope, for the first time in thousands of years, hope was spreading through the galaxy, and the Valori had no weapon that could stop it. 5 years had passed since the human armada first appeared in Valori space. 5 years of war. 5 years of liberation. 5 years of blood and sacrifice and slowly growing hope. Now it was ending, Admiral. Tihi Park stood on the bridge of the UN's Indomitable, looking at the planet below. The Valori homeworld. The heart of an empire that had ruled through cruelty for 12,000 years. The last stronghold of a civilization built on chains. Her hair was fully gray now. Her face carried lines that had not been there when this began. She had lost friends in this war. She had made decisions that haunted her sleep, but she had never stopped. None of them had. Behind her flagship stretched the largest fleet ever assembled in the Andromeda Spiral. Human ships flew alongside vessels from 47 different species, Lotharians, Morith, Kareth, Tobin, and dozens of others who had been freed and chosen to fight for the Ems. Freedom of everyone else. Admiral Commander Sun Wukong reported. High Prefect Morvath is requesting communication. Tihi nodded. Put him through. The holographic image of Morvath appeared before her. He looked old, broken. The confident commander who had crushed rebellions across the galaxy was gone. In his place stood a being who had watched his empire crumble. Admiral Park, he said. His voice was tired. We wish to discuss terms of surrender. A murmur ran through the bridge. They had waited years for this moment. They had fought and bled and died for it. And now it was here. Tihi felt the weight of every sacrifice pressing on her shoulders. Every human soldier who had given their life, every freed slave who had taken up arms and fallen in battle, every world that had burned before they could reach it, the easy choice would be vengeance. The Valor had earned it. They had committed horrors that defied description. They had killed billions. They had destroyed entire civilizations. Justice would mean making them suffer as they had made others suffer. But that was not why humanity had come to the Andromeda Spiral. Standard terms, Tihi said. Her voice was calm and firm. Your leadership will face war crimes tribunals. Common citizens who cooperate with Reconstruction will receive full citizenship rights in the new cooperative. Immediate release of all remaining slaves. Dismantling of all military assets. Morvath stared at her. He had expected rage. He had expected demands for blood. The mercy being offered made no sense to him. You are not going to destroy us? He asked. No, after everything we did. Tihi looked at the Valori commander for a long moment before answering. The Valori Empire ends today. But genocide is not justice. Cruelty is not victory. We came here to end suffering, not to create more of it. She paused. We will hold your leaders accountable for their crimes. But we will not become what we fought against. That is not who we are. The surrender was broadcast across every world in the sector. The war was over. On the bridge of a Liberation fleet ship, General Junhobik watched the announcement with tears in his eyes. The scar on his chest, the one he had earned on Morith Prime, ached in the cold of space. But it was a good ache, a reminder of what they had accomplished. Beside him stood Doan, now a colonel in the combined liberation forces. The Lotharian who had once been a slave was now a leader. He had freed more worlds than he could count. He had lost friends and gained family. He had become something his ancestors could never have imagined. It is over, Jinho said. Duhun shook his head slowly. No, it is beginning. He was right. The Andromeda Cooperative was born in the weeks that followed. A union of species, freed and free, committed to building something better than what had come before. Not an empire. Not a hierarchy. A partnership. Dr. Yuna, as she was now called, became one of its founding members. The young Lotharian medic, who had learned healing from Dr. Yoonji Cho, had grown into a leader herself. She established medical networks across the liberated worlds. She trained doctors from 100 species. She made sure that no one who needed help would be turned away. Every life has value, she told her students, echoing words that Yoonji had once told her. Every person deserves care. That is what the humans taught us. That is what we will teach the galaxy. Years passed, decades. The scars of the Velori Empire slowly healed. Worlds that had known only chains learned what freedom meant. Children grew up never knowing what it meant to be property, and the story of the human, Armada, became legend. On the 50th anniversary of liberation, a ceremony was held on New Unity Station, the capital of the cooperative. A great statue stood in the central plaza. It showed two figures standing side by side, hands clasped. One human, one Lotharian, Elder Yuna, her silver hair now white with age, led a group of young students past the monument. Among them were beings from every species in the cooperative. Human children, Lotharian youth, even young Velori, born into a free society that their grandparents could never have imagined. "Tell us the story again," a small Velori child asked. "About the day the humans came," Una smiled. She remembered everything. The mines, the fear. The moment when a young soldier named Hajan Lee had told her everything would be okay. The arrival of the human armada changed everything forever, she began. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because they believed. They believed that everyone deserved to be free. They believed that strangers were worth fighting for. They believed that mercy was stronger than cruelty, and hope was stronger than fear. She looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Milky Way galaxy still turned. Earth still orbited its sun. Humanity still dreamed of a better universe. And the most amazing thing, Yuna continued, is that they made us believe too. They showed us what we could become. Not slaves. Not victims. Not weapons. People. Free people. With the power to choose our own destiny and help others find theirs. The children listened with wide eyes. This was their history now, their inheritance. The gift that the human armada had given to the galaxy.
"Ow, what happened to the humans?"
A Lotharian child asked. "Where are they now?" Yuna gestured at the crowd around them. Human faces smiled back, mixed among all the other species. They are here. They are everywhere. They did not come to conquer us. They came to join us. They are our neighbors now. Our friends. Our family. She touched the statue gently. They crossed the void between galaxies because they could not stand to see others suffer. And they stayed because they found something worth staying for. That night, there was celebration across the cooperative. Fireworks lit the sky of 100 worlds. Songs were sung in languages that had been forbidden for generations. Former slaves danced with former masters, united by a shared future. Admiral Teehee Park did not live to see this day. She had passed peacefully 10 years earlier, surrounded by those who loved her. But her legacy lived on. Her choice to offer mercy instead of vengeance had shaped everything that followed. In her final message, recorded before her death, she had said something that was now carved into monuments across the cooperative. We did not cross the stars to become rulers. We crossed them to become helpers. We did not fight for power. We fought for possibility. And our greatest victory is not that we won the war. Our greatest victory is that we won the peace. Doan, old now, but still strong, stood before that message every year on the anniversary. He read it aloud to whoever would listen. He wanted everyone to remember. Humans had come from across the void. They had found a galaxy full of suffering. And they had chosen to do something about it. That choice had changed everything, forever.